You'll like it here.
You know, one of the best things I discovered from doing Atkins Harvest Trail Bars. They've got the protein you want without the extra carbs and added sugar you don't want. Because sugar is the enemy of protein. And dark chocolate sea salt and caramel is delicious.
Next, bracing for Irma, the historic Category 5 hurricane is barreling through the Caribbean and heading to our shores. Where will it make impact? Dawn has the latest on the storm's dangerous path. CNN Tonight, live next.
Beginning Monday, September 11th, 2 News launches first at 4. The Miami Valley's first and only 4 p.m. local newscast. First with breaking news.
We have a developing story tonight out of Centerville.
First with the day's top stories.
And now to a story everyone is talking about.
And first with your Storm Team 2 forecast.
And you can expect some showers for the evening commute.
2 News is working for you first at 4. Beginning Monday, September 11th on 2 News.
Wow, nice TV setup. We just got it thanks to River Valley Credit Union. River Valley is great. With the interest we've earned on our high-interest checking and savings accounts, we can splurge on something big every year.
I could really use a vacation, or maybe even a cruise, or new furniture.
What could you do with an extra $1,500 every year? At River Valley, we encourage you to dream big. So, start saving big today with high-interest checking and savings only from River Valley Credit Union.
CNN, the most trusted name in news.
Are back in town after the August recess. The Russia investigations are heating up again. Tomorrow, Donald Trump Jr. is scheduled to speak with staff members of the Senate Judiciary Committee, which has been ramping up its own inquiries in recent months. I spoke with a member of that committee, Senator Chris Coons, earlier. Senator Coons, can you first explain what's going to happen tomorrow? Because this is going to be behind closed doors. The American public will not see or hear from Donald Trump Jr. Is any topic off the table?
Well, Anderson, what I'm really looking forward to is an upcoming public hearing where I'll get the opportunity to question Donald Trump Jr. under oath in front of the full Judiciary Committee. This week, what's happening is a staff interview where I believe Donald Trump Jr. Has voluntarily come in and is open to being asked virtually any question by staff that is relevant to the ongoing investigation.
That interview from the staff, is that on the record? I mean, is that under oath?
Yes, it will produce a transcript that'll be accessible to members of the committee and to others who are investigating potential concerns about the conduct of the Trump campaign. Anyone who testifies in front of a Senate committee is under the restrictions of a statute that says if they attempt to mislead Congress, there are legal consequences.
Obviously, the issue of that meeting last June with the Kremlin.
You know, there's a group called WeatherStem, and they're trying to keep some of you ahead of Irma. Ed Mansouri is among those involved in the project, and he joins us now.
Ed, thanks so much for joining us here tonight. So what kind of data are you providing?
We set up these weather stations all across the state of Florida and beyond. We're collecting, obviously, wind speeds and direction. That's going to be very important information. Temperature, humidity. We also, at most of these sites, have cameras, high-resolution cameras that capture the clouds as the storm approaches. So a lot of information we're gathering. We're hoping the storm spares Florida, but we're hoping to capture some good data nonetheless.
Now, what do you do with this data? Does it go back to the National Weather Service? Do they know about them? Are they looking at it to try to help them in their decision making throughout the day?
Yeah, this project started originally with an educational focus. So there are many ways to pull the data. It's freely available. The National Weather Service offices pretty much across Florida and beyond are using this data. The data is easy to assimilate into other things like newspapers and media. So it's freely available data.
Now, how did you decide to do this?
Well, I'm a meteorologist. That's my background. And I'm also a software developer. So I'm also a citizen of Florida. And Florida, weather is such a big deal here in Florida. You know, our two biggest industries are agriculture and tourism. So we think our students here in Florida should be amongst the most weather literate. So we said, let's bring weather stations to schools all across the state. Let's take the data these systems collect and tie them into educational materials. And it turned out shortly after that, a lot of people were finding health and safety value for the program as well.
And Ed, we've talked many times, including at the American Meteorological Society conference meetings and local meetings as well. I know you've had these stations up for a very long time. What data in the past has surprised you? What kind of weather has popped up that you now use as part of the curriculums that you're building across Florida?
Well, and that's kind of the main thing that we focus on is if you're teaching math or science, instead of making up data, let's use real live world data. So for instance, and all these lessons are pretty much freely available. So last year after the passage of Hurricane Matthew, we took all that data and created this great interactive lesson that showed students, not just from a textbook, but in the real world, what happened as the storm approached, during the storm, once it passed. And a lot of this information is easily searchable online. If you Google WeatherStem, you'll find a lot of this information very easily.
Now, if folks want to contact you about maybe what they might expect, what's some of the best ways to do that?
As far as WeatherStem, we're on weatherstem.com. And here in Florida, we have at least one of these WeatherStem systems in all 67 counties. So if you go to the name of your county.weatherstem.com, so if you're in Miami-Dade, you go to miami-dade.weatherstem.com, and you can see all the systems that we have set up there. And you can also see all of these educational resources and all this curriculum that we've built, as well as these cameras.
And let's assume that there are some sort of direct impacts from IRMA coming through Florida. Do you have any goals? Do you want to take that data and make a new interactive lesson? Do you have any idea what you might do with this data after it comes in?
Yeah, absolutely. We're already wireframing a Hurricane Irma lesson, regardless of what impacts we have on the state. And one thing that'll be interesting, when we set up these weather stations, you can't just show up at a school or a public building and climb on the roof and start attaching weather equipment. In some of Florida's southern counties, they have extremely stringent regulations, like Collier and Monroe, Broward counties, regarding the amount of wind load that these instruments have to be able to withstand. So we're about to put the best practices of our installation crew to the test here over the next several days, I imagine.
No doubt about it. Well, Ed Mansouri there, we certainly appreciate you chatting with us. Indeed, looking forward to see what happens with the system. Hopefully, again, we don't have to deal with the brunt of it, but preparation is the key. Hopefully, everyone is doing that right now.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And of course, we're going to be checking in on those WeatherStem sites throughout the progress of this storm to see the data and see the sky and get more information to send out to you guys. Now, unfortunately, Hurricane Irma is not the only threat swirling the Atlantic right now. Yeah, unfortunately, as Mark said, behind that storm, we've got a couple of other things that we're tracking out there. You've got Katia hanging out there in the Gulf, Jose right behind Irma.
The bottom line is, for your goals, this is a strategy I'd recommend.
Huh. This actually makes sense.
Now, on the next page, you'll see a breakdown of costs.
What?
It's just we were...
We were going to ask about it, but we weren't sure when, so thanks.
Yeah, that's great. Being clear and upfront, multiplied by 14,000 financial advisors. It's a big deal, and it's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing.
Introducing new Kleenex Go Anywhere pack with America's softest ultra tissue.
Johnson, get in there.
Because you can go anywhere. Kleenex, take care, take it on.
You know, a wise man once said, if you can stream it, you should do it. So, we made Local Now. The only way to stream your city. A 24/7 feed, instantly connecting you to your community. And because it's always streaming, you can watch it anywhere on the only schedule that matters. So you can be the hipster of what's happening, the guru of what's going on, a neighborhood knowledge ninja. Local Now. Go ahead, stream on.
Currently in our area, 77 degrees under clear skies. Tonight, mainly clear skies. Low 64. Winds north-northeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Thursday, except for a few Thursday night, a few clouds, low 64. Winds northeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Here's our 7-day outlook.
Line of automotive accessories. Nothing protects like WeatherTech.
10 miles per hour. Here's our 7-day outlook.
Some flooding to St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands and the harbor. But more importantly now, we're watching the winds in San Juan. A gust up to 62 miles per hour. It'll get stronger. Again, only 50 miles away. Only a half inch of rain has fallen in San Juan, but the bands are moving closer to this. And if you can see the color of red, once we get color of red around that inner band, that eye wall, that most likely could strengthen Irma another 5 miles per hour, which would tie, of course, Allen as the strongest ever in the Atlantic since 1980, or that was 1980. Warnings for the Turks and Caicos as mentioned. A 6-foot storm surge on the northern coast of Puerto Rico becomes a 20-foot storm surge in that northeastern quadrant. That's for the southeastern Bahama Islands and Turks and Caicos. Here is the change from last night and this morning. We did have another update at 5 p.m., but not much of a change. Notice it continues its strength 48 hours out as a Category 5. I don't want everybody to just pay attention to this number, because even though it approaches, of course, southern Florida and near Miami, there is more to this than just a category. The category only tells us the strength of the winds. There is heavy rain, there is storm surge, there's a tornado outbreak. We had over 200 tornado warnings when Harvey made landfall and continued its wrath across areas of the Gulf. Now, as it makes its way up to the north, does it hug the coastline? Let's look at some of the computer models again. Another day, extreme agreement with the spaghetti plots as they continue to make their way toward Cuba. A few of them interact with that high terrain. We talked about this the last couple of days. That would tear the system down, maybe drop it to a Category 2. That's unfortunate for them. It would benefit others. But then again, most of the models keep it over water, so it can sustain the strength. Then again, still the timing. On Saturday, we watch the turn to the north, and it makes that right-hand pivot. Once this makes its move, we're going to get a better idea. I know psychologically it is very difficult when you look at something like this not to think that that's what's going to happen. We still have the option in the cone of uncertainty to move into the Gulf, or even like this model shows it, out into the open waters of the Atlantic. But we consider that an outlier, and you erase it. Getting a little bit closer then with the European and with the U.S. model. We're going to take it from just off the coast of Cuba. These models do not interact so much now with Cuba anymore, so it's still significant. And we're going to take it to Sunday morning. Watch the movement. Both models in extreme agreement from around Monroe County, Miami-Dade, and that is Miami. Both of them on top of each other. The U.S. maybe just slightly eastward by 10, 15 miles. And then we'll continue it through Sunday into Monday. Both models take it right across Miami, maybe exiting parts of around Cape Canaveral, and then another landfall up there, Savannah, Georgia. So there's still some uncertainty here. We've got several days here, Wolf, to really decide what the system is going to do. I know it's easy to take a look at this and make your plans, and you should, and possibly evacuate now. But the authorities are watching this closely to see where the mandatory evacuation should be and where the aid needs to be in place come Sunday and Monday.
Yeah, it looks like Miami, Fort Lauderdale, that whole area could be in severe damage control in the next several days. All right, stand by, Tom. We're going to get back to you. We've just received some pictures, aerial photos. You can see it right there of the damage that Irma already has caused on the small Caribbean island of Barbuda. There you can see. Let's just watch this for a moment.
Were taken by a resident. His home was spared. He's got a concrete roof and hurricane shutters, but
all right, you can see the devastation already there.
Not so fortunate. Quote, from my balcony alone, I count at least 24 homes and apartment buildings with either partial or entire roofs missing. He's running a generator, says he has fuel to last for about a week. In a moment, we'll get more from Florida and preparations there. First, though, let's go back to San Juan, Puerto Rico, and Leila Santiago. Leila, the storm is to the north of the island, so clearly it's not going to make landfall there, which is certainly good news. What are the conditions like right now?
Well, we're still seeing a bit of rain and wind gusts coming in from the north, coming in from that way where Irma is. And we're expecting that to continue on through the night. But really for the people here, the people that I'm hearing from in their homes, there's really a sigh of relief, breathing in a sigh of relief, given that it's not as bad as many expected it to be. That's what a lot of people here on the island are saying. You talk to emergency management, the governor himself, they're saying, don't let that guard down just yet. We're going to have a lot of problems here as a result of this hurricane that never actually made landfall here. One of the major problems, flooding already on the eastern part of the island. They have had to rescue more than several dozen people from cars and homes that have been flooded. The other big problem, Anderson, that'll be power. More than 900,000 homes without power at this hour. And already authorities are saying, and this isn't a matter of days, it could be weeks, possibly months before power is restored here. So now damage assessment begins. Already we are getting some reports of damage on the eastern part of the island, and the FEMA director has said that that will be a priority. They will begin damage assessment as soon as possible tomorrow. Anderson?
And how long are the winds, the rain supposed to last? And when's it supposed to be at its worst?
Well, already emergency officials are saying that that they expect tomorrow to be able to go into the areas that were hit the hardest. But this could be the worst that we see at this point. But again, officials pretty much begging people, don't let your guard down just yet. The flooding could really be a problem that comes up pretty quickly here on the island.
Yeah. Well, Santiago, thanks very much. Meantime, further along the storm track, people have already begun pouring out of the Florida Keys. There's really only one way to leave, only one road out. Florida's governor today suspended tolls on state highways. States of emergency now in effect all the way up to North Carolina. For now, though, the focus is squarely on South Florida. Joining us now is the mayor of Broward County, Barbara Sharif. Mayor, according to the models right now, Broward County could be directly impacted by Hurricane Irma. Is the area prepared?
We are very prepared right now. We've put in place our emergency preparations. We've been practicing this for a long time. We have enough fuel. Now it's up to the residents of Broward County to follow the warnings and precautions that we've been given and evacuate in the areas where we have advised to evacuate.
Yeah, I mean, there are mandatory evacuation orders for parts of your county. What's your advice to anyone who's on the fence about staying or not?
Listen, for us, we've learned lessons over the past few years. We've weathered Andrew. Andrew was a Category 4. This is a Category 5. We went through Matthew, and we've only had the bands of Matthew. But when we waited and we saw how people just procrastinated on leaving, they really did put themselves in harm's way. So right now, our goal is to minimize fatalities and protect our residents as best we can, and that comes in the form of being early to evacuate and making sure that they're safe.
I know there have been some reports in parts of the area that gas and water are in low supply. Is there a plan in place to secure resources as they're needed?
So we do not have a shortage of gas right now. It's just the demand and getting it to the gas stations. Broward County has been prepared for this. We have plenty of gas at our port, and we are moving the tankers as quickly as we possibly can. As far as other federal supplies, when the governor declared a state of emergency, FEMA kicked in, and we are now able to access all of the supplies from FEMA. That's water, food, temporary housing assistance. We have the Red Cross on site. They've already been staging. So we are prepared. We're ready.
Mayor Sharif, I appreciate your time, and I wish you and all the folks there the very best. We're obviously going to be continuing to follow it very
Barbuda,
closely in the
the
days and
Hurricane
hours
Irma
ahead.
went right
we'll be
over
right back.
Barbuda. Puerto Rico next in the line to feel Irma's fury. Let's go to our CNN anchor, George.
Well, let's back up, and we can let everyone know what the latest is by looking at the destruction that we're getting reports from the islands of Barbuda and St. Martin. Prime Minister from Barbuda is saying that the island is barely habitable. The French foreign minister in St. Martin is saying now the 4 largest buildings on the island are completely destroyed. Most of the buildings are partially or completely destroyed. We have not heard yet from Anguilla. That is monstrous. We talked about Super Typhoon Haiyan, the strongest storm to ever make landfall anywhere on the earth. This was in November of 2013. That was powerful. But this one surpasses that in the sustaining strength. This has now been over 30 hours with winds of 180 miles per hour or stronger. So again, there's a big, big concern here. Notice the radar. We're about 50 miles from San Juan. So we didn't expect a landfall in Puerto Rico, and it will not make landfall in Dominican Republic or Haiti. But notice the eye. Now, just around the eye, notice that color of yellow. What we may be seeing here is one of those reorganization processes. It's called an eye wall replacement cycle, where the strong winds in the eye fan out, create another eye, and then that banner, that outer band, tightens back up, and it gains strength again. Now, this process can take 10 to 12 hours, but that's maybe what we're seeing here. We talked about it happening maybe 2 or 3 times before it reaches Florida. One thing we know, that outer band is going to lash the coast with 4-foot storm surge. We've got winds over 60 miles per hour already in San Juan. They're going to get stronger. Now to the track. Didn't change much from this morning to this afternoon. We'll have another one later this evening, but it did change from last night, shifting eastward somewhat. Notice the cone of uncertainty. They're keeping this cone still over into the Gulf of Mexico because that's still a possibility. But it's been dragged a little bit to the east. That opens the door to maybe not a landfall in southern Florida, although it's looking more like that. But we're going to watch it day in and day out. If the trend continues eastward, maybe, just maybe, it'll slide off the coastline. That is not good news for the Carolinas. But notice this one model. That's what we want to see. But unfortunately, because it's the only one, we consider that an outliner. Now, there's about 71 computer models. 50 of them are under the umbrella of the European, 21 under the U.S. model. So these are the 21, and they're trending more to the east. So we could see a variety of landfalls. Most likely, now we're looking at maybe not the possibility of interaction with Cuba, which would keep its strength. The one thing this reminds me of, last year, Matthew. Remember, you could probably recall, those that live there know the damage. We had a storm surge down in western Haiti of 26 feet, and that's where the majority of the fatalities were. We had a few in Cuba, but I believe we had over 20 from the historical flooding in the Carolinas. But that cost $15 billion. It just hugged the coastline. So the catastrophic damage stayed offshore, and we had light to moderate, although it was catastrophic in toward the Carolinas. And Wolf, look at this. We talked about Jose becoming a hurricane. It is. And now we've got Katia. That was named a tropical storm this morning, and now it's a hurricane. Katia is going to drop southward. We have a nice cold front right here moving through the southeastern U.S., and it's too bad that cold front wasn't a couple of days away, because that would really help steer IRMA away from the U.S. mainland. But because it's here now, it'll push Katia to the south. The problem is, if we watch Jose, it looks like it could become a major hurricane now. Talked about it moving to the north, becoming a fish storm in the open Atlantic, but the models are carrying it extremely close now in the future to the northern islands of the Lesser Antilles that have just been decimated. We still believe it will turn to the north, but this is getting to be a little too much. Not 1, not 2, 3. The last time was in 2010, Wolf, when we had Carl, Julia, and Igor. That's enough.
What a horrible, horrible situation unfolding. All right, Tom, we're going to get back to you. I know you're standing by for the latest.
Conditions are going to continue to deteriorate in San Juan and all of Puerto Rico. They're not looking at a major landfall. It was not expected to. But this is the second strongest hurricane we've ever had in the Atlantic, only by 5 miles per hour to Hurricane Allen in 1980. But this has surpassed Allen in another devastating category. Allen didn't churn for 30 straight hours with winds over 180. That's never happened before. This is the strongest that has ever made landfall in the Leeward Islands, and it is devastating island after island. Look at the radar. We're within 50 miles now of San Juan. Notice the eye. Still, this is where the strongest winds are, but you'll notice a secondary eye in yellow here. We may be going through a reorganization process, but one thing we know for sure, that secondary eye, that's heavy rainfall. That's strong winds. Hurricane winds are now sliding across all of Puerto Rico.
Her name
Again,
is IRMA,
devastation
slamming through the Caribbean right now, taking aim right at Florida. Thousands and thousands of people fleeing before it is too late. This is CNN Tonight. I'm Don Lemon. Thank you for joining us. The core of this Category 5 storm north of Puerto Rico with maximum winds of 185 miles an hour. That as mandatory evacuations begin in Florida. This is one of the strongest hurricanes ever in the Atlantic. To get an idea of its power, just listen to the sound as Irma hit the Caribbean island of St. Martin. Powerful. And on Barbuda, the Prime Minister says the island is literally rubble. My goodness, look at those pictures. Up to 37 million people at risk tonight. 37 million people at risk. And that's just the beginning. There are now 3 hurricanes in the Atlantic: Irma, Jose, and Katia. Our reporters are live tonight throughout the region, all across the region. We've got this covered. CNN's Tom Slater is in the Weather Center for us, and that's where we're going to begin tonight with Tom Slater. Tom, this is a monster of a hurricane plowing through the Caribbean right now. What's the latest on this?
Well, you said it perfectly, Don. I mean, we're running out of adjectives and superlatives to describe it. When a meteorologist runs out of those, it's time to pack up and head out, because we have seen now 32 straight hours plus that the system has been churning with winds at 180 miles per hour or greater. I mean, we haven't had systems like this. This is definitely the strongest to ever impact the Leeward Islands. And last night, we were concerned about Barbuda. In fact, around 1 in the morning. In fact, barely habitable, as you mentioned, the Prime Minister said. St. Martin, the French foreign minister, said that the 4 tallest buildings on the island are completely destroyed, as well as most of the buildings, either completely or partially. We haven't heard from Anguilla yet. British Virgin Islands took a direct hit as well. If there's any good news I can find in the last couple of hours, is we're not looking at a major landfall in the near future. So we got maybe another 24 hours without one, and it's pulling away from Puerto Rico. Good news, it's about 70 miles away now. It's been undergoing a kind of an eye wall replacement cycle, reorganizing itself. So again, as it starts to strengthen again, we're going to watch this system make its way toward Cuba, then northward. They have moved it just about 60 to 70 miles from where it was at this time last night. Anyone in this cone of uncertainty, still, the options are open. We should know more in about 24 to 48 hours.
And also, Tom, Irma may not be the only problem ahead. There are other systems as we're looking at. We mentioned Jose and Katia as well. Katia is actually in the Gulf of Mexico right now.
Yeah, that one popped up. Just a cluster of storms this morning. It was called a tropical storm, and by this evening, they named it a hurricane as well as Jose. Now, we knew Jose was going to be a hurricane, but it is interesting, Don. There is a cold front sweeping down through the southeastern U.S. It's too bad that cold front wasn't moving through on Friday, because that would push Irma out into the ocean. But I think this cold front is going to push Katia down toward Veracruz, Mexico. So for those of you in Texas, Louisiana, do not fret. That one's not moving anywhere. But I am a little concerned about Jose. Yes, it is a hurricane as well. And we know it's following Irma, but for the most part, it's going to come pretty close. You're going to see the pattern of rainfall for Irma, and then you see a little spike. It comes close to those islands again, and maybe as a major hurricane, but it's going to be nice to see that one move into the open waters.
All right, Tom Slater in the Weather Center. Tom, we'll check back with you. Thank you so much for that. I want to get now to CNN's Layla Santiago. She's live for us in San Juan. So, Layla, I've been watching you report all day. We spoke last night. The weather in Puerto Rico has really deteriorated as the hours tick by. What are you seeing right now?
Well, we are still seeing rain, some heavy wind gusts coming in, but really, on this island breathing a sigh of relief because this is not what was initially expected from people here on this island, given that this was preliminarily expected to be a catastrophic event here. So that is what a lot of people are saying on social media, calls that I have made to others that are in their own homes. And yet government officials, emergency management officials are saying, don't let your guard down now, because even if this rain and this wind that isn't what we saw earlier is the worst of it, we still have a lot of problems coming as a result of it. Let's start with power. More than 900,000 households right now without power. And Don, authorities here have already said this won't be a matter of days. It could be days, possibly months before the power is back and restored for the folks that lost it tonight. And then there is the flooding. That is certainly going to be an issue already on the eastern part of the island. Rescue crews have had to go in to save dozens of people from flooding in homes as well as in cars. So flooding and power are big issues. And of course, tomorrow, damage assessment begins. The FEMA director here already saying that they will begin damage assessment as soon as possible. Don?
Layla Santiago, thank you for your reporting. We'll check back with you as well. Joining me now by phone from St. Martin is Lauren Ann Mayo. She lives in Florida and is on vacation on the island. Thank you so much, Lauren. You're there with a group of people, of 5 people, I believe. So tell us what it is like, what it was like when Irma hit.
Well, we woke up about 3 in the morning after a little cat nap, and the winds were howling. The rain started beating on the door to our balcony. And it got progressively worse. We really couldn't see anything until about, I want to say, 5:30 or 6 this morning. And then there was the most eerie blue light we've ever seen, with the rain just smashing into the sliding glass doors. And we're on the 6th floor, so we didn't have any wave water come up, but the way that everything's framed in this room, it was coming between the doors, sending debris in here, and basically flooded our room. We had a couple inches of water on the ground in both bedrooms, bathrooms, kitchen, living room, and the balcony was just a swimming pool. So it's been a terrifying experience, but we've all come out of it okay, and we're just glad everyone's safe.
You were capturing video during the hurricane. Let's take a look at it.
Shoes are soaked. Yeah. And it's really fun. Notice we're moving farther from the door. We're gonna move back. We might have to keep the bathroom. How do we still have internet this country? Still have Wi-Fi.
My goodness, it's coming through down like a fire hose.
Yes, everything was shaking. It was pretty scary. We were just hoping that the door didn't crack and, everything flew inside and started to flying at us. So once we realized that the door was shaking extremely hard, and the rain was just really, really coming down, we hid out in one of the bathrooms and kind of barricaded ourselves. There were 3 doors